Okay, I'm gonna try to do the most organized presentation. This is the video. It's an official selection from GoPro, our friends of the curvature.
Mark.
So this is the
seconds.
video. You are hearing the sound?
Auxiliary enable. Signal return.
Yep, we hear it.
Okay, so I'm gonna play it and take a look down here when,
-15.
where they put the telemetry.
+5. +10. Burn out. Good burn. Copy, good burn.
So the outside temperature is really going down. You have the Fahrenheit down here and the Celsius degrees, and this is and again, this is my interpretation of what they presented here, but it's -454 degrees. Maybe I'm interpreting something, I don't know, wrong about this, but when I see this telemetry down here, I say, well, we have this kind of strange temperature that when we go up, it's not getting more hot, it's getting more cold. And in fact, when you go to the official thermosphere type of chart, thermosphere, supposedly they have this, like they tell you that we have like temperatures that are going very, very low until the point of the karma line. And then suddenly we have these super high temperatures, degrees, going crazy and up to 2000 Celsius degrees. But all the measurements that the official equipment that can produce is below the karma line. And at least the pattern, the gradient, it's consistent with this. If we have temperatures like -100 degrees in 19 kilometers, maybe when you go up like this rocket that reach almost 120 kilometers, things are getting more cold than hot. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that when you go to the official things like, for example, the Einstein-Bose condensation, I don't know if you are aware of that kind of research that the science produced in the early 20th century, but all these behaviors in terms of, they are crazy trying to, let me go here, trying to understand what happened. The key is the lower temperatures. It's like the matter getting crazy, it's doing all these kind of strange things when it go almost to the 0 Kelvin degree. So I'm gonna play this video. It's only 2.5 minutes, if you allowed me, just for putting all the pieces on the table, and then you can everyone out there can make his own interpretation.
Solid. You bet. Here, go for it.
It would not be a solid, or liquid, or gas. It was given a name almost as strange as its properties, a Bose-Einstein condensate. For the next 70 years, people could only dream about making such a condensate.
Matter can exist in various states. Atoms at high temperature always form gases. If you cool the gas, it becomes a liquid. If you cool the liquid, it becomes a solid. But
of course, everybody knows that.
Under certain circumstances, if you cool atoms far enough to extremely low temperatures, they undergo a very strange transformation. They undergo an identity crisis. So let me show you.
I like that word, density crisis. But if you are following the image that they produced to trying to explain this, you're gonna have all these strange pattern. Of course, this is not from reality, but it's the idea that something really, really weird in terms of movement of these particles, quote unquote particles, are start to produce. So trying to keep this, keep that in mind.
What I mean by an identity crisis. When you go to low temperatures, the quantum mechanical properties of the atoms become important. These are very strange, very unfamiliar to us, but in fact, each one of these atoms starts to display wave-like properties. So instead of points like that, you have little wave packets like that moving around. It's really difficult for me to explain just why that is, but that's the way it is. Now, as you go to very low temperatures, the size of these packets gets longer and longer and longer. And then suddenly, if you get them cold enough, they start overlapping. And when they overlap, the system behaves not like individual particles, but particles which have lost their identity. They all think they're everywhere. This little wave packet over here can't tell whether it's this one or that one or that one or that one or that one, and it's there and it's there and it's there. They're all in one great big quantum state. They're all overlapping. They're all doing the same thing. And what they're doing, to a good approximation, is they're simply sitting at rest. This Bose-Einstein condensate is very difficult to imagine or to visualize. I could imagine what it's like to be an atom running around gaily, freely, bouncing into things, sometimes going fast, sometimes going slow. But on the Bose condensate, I'm everywhere at once. I've lost my identity. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm at rest, and all the other atoms around at rest, but they're not other atoms around. We're all just one great big quantum system. There's nothing else like that in physics, and certainly not in human experience. So just to think about,
maybe it's called ether, but
wonder and confusion.
The thing is that this state it produced when you go really low temperature. So when you go up here, you have really low temperature, and when you start apply that with the superfluid behavior of the matter. Well, I don't know if okay, this is in Spanish, but when you apply that with superfluids, you have this strange behavior between gases that are really cooling down and start like lost it not just the identity of the state, but they also produce no refraction. It's like zero index of refraction. It has no friction, which is really something that strange too. Let me just play this 1 minute clip.
There were more surprises ahead. In the 1930s, another strange phenomenon was observed at even lower temperatures. This rapidly evaporating liquid helium cools until at 2 degrees above absolute zero, a dramatic transformation takes place.
Suddenly, you see that the bubbling stops and that the surface of the liquid helium is completely still. The temperature is actually being lowered even further now, but nothing particularly is happening. Well, this is really one of the great phenomena in 20th century physics.
The liquid helium had turned into a superfluid, which displays some really odd properties.
Here I have a beaker with an unglazed ceramic bottom of ultrafine porosity.
Ordinarily, this container with tiny pores can hold liquid helium. But the moment the helium turns superfluid, it leaks through.
We call this kind of flow a superflow.
Superfluid helium can do things we might have believed impossible. It appears to defy gravity. A thin film can climb walls and escape its container. This is because a superfluid has zero viscosity. It can even produce a frictionless fountain, one that never stops flowing. Superfluidity and superconductivity were baffling concepts for scientists. New radical theories were needed to explain them.
So I just present this to have some pieces together, like we can now analyze what happened in the upper atmosphere. So I have here like a compilation, and this is where it's going to get what I tell you that it's self-oriented. This is a sounding rocket launched by the German Space Agency called DLR in 2006, something like that. It's called Matthews 6. And paying attention to what happened to the sound and what happened to the orientation of the rocket. But before that, let me just clarify this. It's official that we have up in the upper atmosphere a gas, which is called the sulfur hexafluoride, which is a gas has this property. It's colorless, odorless, non-toxic, non-flammable gas, so it not allow flame or burn of nothing like combustion related. Is present in octahedral molecular geometry, like some sort of dome, if you want to, in terms of molecular structure, and is 6 times more heavier than the regular air. It's more greenhouse effect is much, much bigger than the CO2, and it has a period of life of 3,200 years once get up in the atmosphere. And why it doesn't go down if it's more heavy than the air? Because the lower temperature doesn't allow it to go down. So the thing is that every time a volcano make eruptions, inject into that upper, this is for me are the pillars of the dome, if you want to see in some symbolic way, because anytime that a volcano here on Earth make eruptions, it injects to the upper atmosphere quintillions of tons of hexafluoro gas, among with the CO2, nitrogen gases, and things like that. But it's like these are like our pillars for the dome not going down or something like that, you know, because it produces all these components that you need to have this kind of state up in the atmosphere. So this is official data you can find on Wikipedia, on geological books, or whatever. This is not some sort of imagination topic or something like that. So we have this kind of gas. We have this kind of temperature, we have this kind of behavior in terms of what happened to the matter in this lower temperature, especially on fluids, not just on regular solid matter. So what you're gonna see now is all these properties here on Earth, you know, like you can make it an image, because we have this gas which is 5 times more dense the air, is thermal insulator, non-flammable, reduce the sound frequency and not produce refractive index, and is colorless and odorless, so you don't gonna see nothing. It's gonna be like something completely invisible to the naked eye. So about the density, this is a really straightforward example. This aluminum foil is floating like being in some kind of fluid, and indeed that's what happened, because we have this container filled with hexafluoride gas. So in fact, you can take it and drop inside of the aluminum box, and the aluminum box starts going down, because it's the air in this state is not going to be strong enough to resist that weight. But like I tell you before, this is just an example to see what happened in terms of density between this gas and the air that is around the room and the container. So here is the density part. Then you have the non-flammable or thermal insulator, because it uses in electrical industry to isolate big equipment of electricity before some kind of human enter there. And here you can see the pattern, how the candles start turning off in this pattern way, because the liquid or the gas is falling here, it's hitting the first candle and start to spread in this kind of circle pattern, shooting down the rest of the candle. So indeed, it not allow any kind of combustion there, but not only in terms of fire, but also in terms of electricity. When you put this device that produces electricity to give you some kind of shock electricity, when it's introduced inside the gas, it's turning off immediately. And when it's getting off again on the air, standard air, it's turning on. Then you have the sound frequency down. It's lower the frequency sound. So what I'm trying to, like I mentioned before, to present here is the conditions that this kind of environment produce. So when you have this rocket launch up in the atmosphere, you're going to have all these ingredients playing around the rocket. You have the sound that is going down because there is less air, of course. You start losing the flame, of course, because the rocket itself is getting off the fuel, but also for the conditions out there. Then they activate the yo-yo the spin to stabilize the rocket. And the inertia, of course, of the rocket is still keeping the rocket going up. So why is that fade produced? Well, that fade is produced by the O agency because they say, now we're going to enter in 6 minutes of microgravity. But the strange thing is that now you can see the rocket, it's in this orientation, it's like a side orientation, and they're gonna show us where the rocket enter again in our atmosphere. And when I say that, I refer in like when it came from the 120 kilometers to maybe 100 kilometers up there. But you can see how the rocket is going to self-oriented again, like Earth sky type of orientation, and maybe it could be something more in terms of electricity. First of all, you're gonna see like dripping water coming up, came off, I don't know where, but you are going to see that is recovering the sound. Then you have this dripping water like in the superfluid state, and then it's self-oriented. And now that's
it's a bit too loud, Ido, we cannot hear you.
The earth resistance.
Sorry. We could not hear you there. Sorry, we could not hear you because it was very loud, the video.
Okay, no, I say you have this kind of change orientation, and it's automatically. I mean, it's not for the rocket. It's not from the rocket. It's like something from the system itself.
It's like it's floating. It just all
like,
of a sudden became buoyant and floating on something.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have the sounds producing by the resistance with the air, but like some kind of boat sound. And the amazing thing is that I have here like a compilation of other rockets. You have the Go Fast, the NASA sounding rocket, Foxy rocket, the Delaware Matthews 5, and the Rocksat X 2012, and all produce the same sounds and the same behavior. Once they going from a really short gradient, because this is not happen, you know, super slowly, this kind of transformations in terms of the orientation is a super gradient, super slowly. No, this is like a critical point. It is from here to up is this kind of lost identity state, and from this point down is everything correctly self-oriented. The sounds, it's again recovering, everything is good again. So
start moving very fast as well, no?
Start moving very fast. They call this microgravity. I call this no identity state. And you know, I mean, when you keep going, this is like illustration that I made is like you have like regular particles in the upper atmosphere, and then you enter to other state where things behave completely different to normal because the lower temperatures, the conditions that happen up there. So what I'm trying to say is that for me, after seeing all these kind of things and connected with the sprite, that you have the limit also in the 100 kilometer, remember these gases are thermal insulator. So you don't gonna have sprite going up because this kind of behavior and gases is not allow you. because you cannot produce electricity passing certain point in the upper atmosphere. So we have all the ingredients. This is my opinion and my hypothesis, to think that we have a barrier, but in a natural way. The intelligence that produced this world create this limit on the Antarctic, maybe with the low temperatures, and up in the sky with the same kind of technique, if you want to. And in fact, when you go to the ancient cultures, you're going to have these kind of symbols that somebody said that it's referring to our electrical magnetic nature. And you're going to have also the pillars, this kind of pillars in Egypt and all that ancient culture that referring to the magnetic field of the earth. This is, of course, interpreted things that a lot of researchers drop out there. Then you have the connection. Sorry, I go really fast, I know that. Then you have the connection with our modern electricity gurus like Nikola Tesla. Then you have the Aurora Borealis symbology and all this kind of stuff. So for me, the barrier is some kind of natural barrier produced by gases in really lower temperature, and is our dome.
Brilliant. Freaking brilliant, IRU. Wow.